So it's not just hand-waving slides. So I want to get through the slides pretty quickly, so there's time for questions and time for a demo. So this is the complete picture. I got this handy little laser pointer in my materials. Let's see if it works. A little tiny laser. So CDMI is a standard for cloud storage. What is cloud storage? I won't go into that. We had a bunch of talks earlier today on what cloud storage is. But there's two aspects of a cloud API. And that one is to act as a data path where you can put your storage in and get your data out. The other is to act like a management path so you can tell the cloud what you want from the cloud. So if you're going to use it as a data path, we offer a RESTful API to store and retrieve your files, your objects from the cloud. Very similar to Amazon S3, not a lot different. Your storage then looks like a series of containers. We can actually have containers within containers as well. We also have the ability to manage legacy storage. So if you have an NFS or a CIFS target here, or an iSCSI or Fiber Channel 1, you can also manage that with this standard. We basically allow you to come in as a management path to manage the aspects of that container. What we don't do much, and we haven't standardized yet, is anything having to do with these database tables, the NoSQL stuff, and so forth. Now, we can also be an interface to use between clouds. There's a company here, Oxygen, I think they had a booth, that is basically a cloud broker. And they sit in front of other clouds, and they can broker for those other clouds. The clouds are going to be very specialized over time. You'll see a lot of specialization over time of clouds. So what a cloud broker does is it sits in front of that other cloud and offers you a wider range of services than it can offer itself by outsourcing itself to other clouds. So why not just adopt one of the existing interfaces out there? Why not just use Amazon S3, use Novonix or GoGrid's API? Well, despite the open licensing of those APIs, they're still under the change control of a single vendor, right? Amazon. And so if I'm a competitor of Amazon, I don't really want Amazon to have anything change control over the interface that I've implemented. So I'm going to release my own interface that I do have change control over. And what that does is you get what the current situation is this huge proliferation of proprietary APIs out there that nobody wants to share. You know, if I was doing a cloud today, I probably wouldn't invent my own API. I'd pick Amazon's or I'd pick somebody else's, but I'd extend it. And what CDMI does is it's under the change control of a standards body. So that standards body then in turn is going to accommodate the requirements coming from each of its constituent members. And then that change control is done not by one of your competitors, but by an industry standards body, which you have some control over because you're a member of that industry standards body. So CDMI is version 1.0. It's done. It's what we call a SNIA architecture. We've got several implementations underway. I'll show you one here in a minute. So there's no excuse for a storage vendor to say, the standard isn't done, or I'm kind of waiting for standards to happen. Standards happened. So there's no excuse for the cloud vendor not to start implementing it. There's no excuse for a customer not to start requiring it in their RFPs and say, show it to me on the roadmap. Okay, maybe you don't have it implemented yet, but where is it? 6 months, 9 months, a year out? Don't give me the excuse that the standard's not done anymore. So let's look at what the standard actually looks like, right? What is the model for the standard? And the model is very simple. This is the entire model. There's only 5 resource types in this REST API. There's only 5 MIME types that you have to code to in your interface. Of course, you have to have a container because that's where you put things. What you can put in a container is other containers, or you can put data objects, or you can put a special kind of object called a queue. A queue is a first in, first out kind of data container, if you will. Now, how do I know what aspects of this interface any given storage vendor has given me? I need something like a service catalog, right? We provide the service catalog here in this capabilities resource type. So if you go and get this particular URI, you'll find out what the capabilities of the overlying cloud is. How much of CDMI do I implement? How much of these data services do I offer you? And then you also need to be able to go and programmatically get your bill. Why is this important? Well, if all I've got is a web page and I have to scrape the web page for my bill, how am I going to compare one vendor against the other? How can I say this guy's cheaper for what he's offering than this other guy? I want to be able to go and get my bill. I want to be able to put alerts on my bill. I want to be able to notify somebody that I'm over budget. So what does this look like when you roll it out? Well, you guys have probably seen network cache storage boxes. And a lot of cloud vendors are trying to sell you a private cloud that's basically a parallel file system underneath. You have a load balancer in front, and this is your entry point into the storage cloud, if you will. What you have in here is a bunch of scale-out data path servers. So if you're implementing the data path, what you need is some place to run the code that's handling those REST APIs, right? It's going to come in, it's going to get processed, you're going to decide what to do with it, and then you're going to go and access the file somewhere out in your storage area network, right? Now, what CDMI offers is the ability to query the metadata in the cloud. So you can actually search for your file without knowing what the URI was. If I tag my file with metadata that says who the author is, what the program was that created it, all that metadata allows me to find that file even 10, 100 years later, right? I don't have to remember what I named it. I don't have to remember what bucket I stuck it in, right? So that metadata then has to run somewhere in an independent place from where all the data is stored. The other thing that CDMI does is it standardizes the format to take your data out of one cloud and put it into another cloud. Not just the data, not just, you know, the PDFs, sucking out the PDFs and putting the PDF somewhere else. It also takes this metadata, and it has specific metadata having to do with these underlying data services. How often does it get backed up? How many copies of the data are there? What is the retention period for this data? How long do I have to keep it around before it gets deleted? All those sort of data requirements are specified in our model using the metadata. And so you need an interoperable way to take that data and its requirements from one cloud to another, from a private cloud up into a public cloud, from one cloud vendor to another, from a cloud broker to a back-end cloud vendor, right? And only if they're each interpreting that metadata in the same way, according to the CDMI standard, are you really going to get what you require for that data.